Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started. Well, I'm excited to talk with you today because I am seeing a trend in a lot of my clients' offices. I have been, honestly, for a few months, where I'm seeing this steady decline in treatment acceptance. Even somebody that's got a tooth that is infected that needs extracting, they're potentially even trying to put that off. So it's not even just the elective things, it's even the urgent things that a lot of my clients are telling me, wow, I don't know how to overcome this. It seems like they're just less willing to move forward with treatment. So I wanted to see if you were experiencing that in your practice and if you have any thoughts on it.
I have a lot of thoughts, theories, probably actually maybe not even thoughts, just a lot of complaints about it. A lot of venting I could do about that. Are we experiencing that? I'm sure we are. I've not really looked at that carefully. And I think also summertime's deceiving for us. Because in a pedo office, we've been busier than we've been, all year. So it seems like we're busy. So maybe it seems like people are accepting. But when I think about like the op column, has that been consistently full? I'm going to say no. On the other, again, in pedo, it's very different where a lot of, I think because you get that cycle of people not accepting. So general dentists tend to not refer anybody anymore, and they'll push through and grit their teeth and see the kid and do what they can because they can't afford to let that walk out their doors. So we've always kind of had that problem. But I do think, we had those episodes with your husband a few episodes back about the economy and recession and all of that. So that's when I was thinking like, oh man, is this going to hit hard?
Yeah.
So I have a hard time answering that question about me in particular because I feel like we feel busy only because it is the summertime. So I guess I'd have to have you ask me again in 2 months.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a really good point for our listeners to pay attention to, because sometimes we can miss that trend in the midst of it just being overall busy. And I could see that happening in your practice for sure. But are we tracking that treatment acceptance number? So yeah, we may have plenty of appointments because it's summer and kids are out or families are available, but are we tracking that treatment acceptance number?
So now that you mentioned that, I'm sure you remember this because we are probably maybe a month, this happened a month ago in our practice, where we have IV days where we have a anesthesia team that comes to the office, and our more extensive cases we complete with the child under deep sedation. And in my mind, I count on June, July, and August to really kind of float the whole fall. Like it is, a important time for us to be there and crank it out. And I remember thinking at the beginning of June, I want to say that our IV day was mid-June, and I looked at it and it was 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks away. And I looked at it and I'm like, why are there no patients scheduled on this day? Because in my mind, it's the time that people have the time. They're always worried about their kids. A lot of people think that their kid going under IV, getting full mouth treatment needs, their kid's going to be out a week. They don't want to miss school. And not that that's what it ends up being, but that's the perception.
Right.
So then you would think, they would wait to schedule it in the summer. And this year, 10 days out from IV day, we had 0 patients on the schedule. And I went, what is going on? Why is this way? And so, of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, is the team not following up with these patients? It is hard to get patients to get on board with, especially our patients that a lot of times being just low dental IQ, coming in, they see one brown hole. We take our intraoral photos. We're like, actually, that's 13 brown holes. Or they were referred from somebody, who doesn't ever refer, but now they clearly know they can't manage the 3-year-old with 14 holes in their head. And then so the parent is kind of shell-shocked and all of that. But that's throughout the year. So I would have imagined that summer would be the time where they would hone in and take care of that. distracted myself here, but my point was that I thought maybe it was the team members not following up and not ensuring, because a lot of these people are like, oh, I'm going to go get a second, third, fourth opinion. I'm going to call my insurance and fight with insurance. And so really we tend to want to stay on top of those because we know what's going to happen. This kid's going to hurt. Their face is going to blow up. Happens all the time. The parents calling us in distress. And we don't have another anesthesia date until the next month. Right. And so we try to follow up. And I was like, I bet you anything my team's not been following up because summer's hit and we're busy. And they're not keeping track. So that was, and I didn't want to come out and say that. What have y'all been doing? I just was like, I'm just highly alarmed. Like, what is going on, guys? Why don't we have any? And so it opened up that floodgate. And then I basically passed it on to you. What did you find with that? Was it what was the issue?
We couldn't figure out necessarily what the issue was. As we dug into each case, it was a little bit different. This particular parent, oh gosh, that's just so much money. I can't do that. This particular parent wanted another opinion. So I feel like there was not one clear stated reason that the parent wasn't moving forward with the IV sedation treatment, but we were seeing significantly less IV cases. And so I actually dug in to your numbers last month and was like, okay, is this just a fluke or is this a trend? And when I looked, we are this year compared to last year in your office doing less treatment procedures. We're seeing more hygiene patients, but we're doing less treatment procedures. And so we ended up doing with your team a whole day on treatment acceptance and communication.
So then I'm following with the trend of what you talked about. Like for the goal of this podcast was to talk about, is this a trend? So you're saying I do fall into that trend where we are getting less treatment acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah. And not just on the big cases. So it was even on your, general, easy, one filling, two filling type appointments. That though we were seeing a little bit of a downturn, we saw a significant downturn in the IV cases, but we saw even a minimal decrease in your, what I would call everyday dentistry cases. So then
that begs the question back to, again, why are we seeing that? Is it a patient issue? Is it an office issue? Like, is it us did we see things rebound better after we did the all day treatment acceptance training? Like, it's been too soon to see if there's a trend from that. So, that's where I start going, am I picking on my team? And so that's what you and I have done. We've kind of dissected and going, who's doing the treatment talks? What is our flow? What is our follow-up? So we're still trying to, navigate that.
To me, we have to focus on that. I think it's real easy to chalk it up to the economy, which I will come back and say something on that because I think that's a significant part of what's going on. But I still feel like we've got to take the time to go, man, we're seeing a downward trend. And anytime we see a downward trend, we need to go back and look at the root cause. And so in this particular case, we were concerned about some of the team members that were in those critical roles of presenting treatment plans or presenting finances. We went back and looked at financing options that we were offering. Is there anything we need to be doing differently there? Okay, what about our follow-ups? Are we being consistent there? So I would say you have to go back and look at that. Even if you're just like, oh no, we're great at all of that. If you've ever seen a downward trend, go back and look.
So I'm going to say the opposite. My reaction would be, it's not that we're doing great with all of that. It's, I'm sure we're not doing great with all of that. And it goes back to staff. The same conversation, I feel like I blame this all the time, but I don't know how to get rid of it in my mind going, we all are struggling to find staff and good staff, and we have to tippy-toe around. And, where you're like, you kind of suck at this, but I don't know where else to put you. We need a warm body here. But do you really suck at it? Maybe sometimes you do and sometimes you... Like, it's just so multifactorial that I start going, I don't know, and I bury my head.
Right.
And so I guess that's also, like, don't fool yourself into thinking that everything's great. Like, make sure the numbers back it up is what you're saying. But also, I guess, advice for the people like me that are like, I can't deal with this. Like, all I can do is diagnose and hope the patient doesn't hurt. but I kind of want the patient to hurt so that they'll move forward. Like it's that kind of angel devil, like, you're like, I don't want this kid to be in pain, but the parent doesn't believe me right now. And then I've got to go, quit taking it personal. It's not that the parent doesn't believe you. Like, we all see the gigantic hole because we took a photo of it. It's just they're still trying to figure out what to do about it, which goes back to the economy. And I can't blame them when you've got, insurance is making you wait till you hit a deductible, or they're making you wait until you qualify for your basics to kick in, or whatever it is. But in a lot of ours, it's, their treatment plan is close to $5,000 just for the dental alone, for pedo, for baby teeth. But that's how many are rotted. And, and then you want the zirconia crown option, and you want that's not even counting the IV fee. So I'm like, okay, if somebody told me I needed to pay $7,000 right now, or $4,000 or $3,000, I would be like, yeah, I don't know. Do we really need this?
Yeah.
So I can't fault the patient at all with all of that. It's just, I'm not sure what to do about it.
Well, and I think this also goes to the economy causing people to reevaluate every spending decision, right? Even if it is this, I literally am swollen from a, dead tooth and I need to have it extracted, but groceries are still costing me double or triple than what I used to pay. And at the end of the day, if it means I have to walk around with an infection in my face to feed my family, and I know that sounds dramatic and we don't want to think about it on that level, but in all honesty, a lot of people walk paycheck to paycheck, and so that money is going towards what they would call the essentials, the things that they have to have.
Well, and I think I think there's also probably a subset of people that are like, back to the same, like, people, travel is at an all-time high and all of this. And I think people are kind of like, I'm going to just quit being a baby. It's just a tooth. It's just a tooth. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be fine. We already had this Disney vacation plan. We already had this cruise plan. We've already planned to go see family and have a family reunion. Like, I'll be okay. Like, how bad could it be? I'll just take some more Tylenol and I'll be fine. So I think it's just kind of they're burying their heads in the sand, not wanting to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting too, I was just talking with one of my clients about this. It's almost like a double negative has hit because people booked vacations last year for this summer. Well, last year, if you remember, the economy, it's not that we weren't experiencing inflation, it's that we weren't experiencing the pain of that inflation yet. And so fast forward to about February of this year is when we started to finally see the economic kind of environment slow down a little bit. People started spending less. Well, people booked vacations last year. So now you're getting this February, March, I'm worried about the economy now, and now it is impacting my spending, but I've got this vacation in June that I can't cancel, and, well, crap, now my kid needs $4,000 worth of dentistry. Something's got to give, right? And so it's almost like because people booked it last year when they felt better about the economy, they're having to pay for that now, that vacation now, and this new expense, there's just not extra. Now, could they get creative and figure out the way? Absolutely, and that's what we've got to help them with. But I do think it's causing people to just pause and go, do I need to spend this right now? Can I wait? Are they going to be waiting for pain to happen? I don't think in their mind they're thinking that, but that's probably what they're waiting for, which is awful for us, but at the same time, it's just the nature of what we've got right now.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely that, well, I'll deal with this when I have to. Mm-hmm. And they don't let themselves think about, could I end up in the hospital with cellulitis? Could I end up with... It's like, I will worry about that when I have to. Mm-hmm. And so you're kind of just dealing with what you can that's directly in front of you. And like you said, I can't fault people for that. And then I start thinking in pedo case in particular, so you've got this family that's got the, 4-year-old that can barely sit in the chair, but they need 12 things fixed. And from our side, we're saying it's going to be more cost effective for you to just get it done one time under IV. And the parent's like, you've got to be crazy. I don't have that kind of money. And now they're probably going down the street to one of 80 general dental providers who normally would be like, oh, heck no, get out of my office. But now they're sitting going, we got nothing else to do. I guess I better buck up and do some dentistry. Mm-hmm. And so it's like this spiral. Now, as far as your general dentists that are seeing poor case acceptance or mm-hmm. your orthodontists or whoever else it is, I guess that's not the same for them, but maybe it is. People are just holding off.
Yeah. I think there's more hesitation to spend. And while we can understand it and relate to it 100%, we have to then start balancing out, okay, but what do we do with this problem? It's like, it's still a problem. Even if we can understand it and relate to it, what can we do about it to solve it?
So then I start going, okay, well, first of all, I think I've got to make sure I make it as easy as I can for them to schedule. So we can talk about some of those things. The next thing I think about is, okay, then do I need to take every insurance under the plan to make sure that that's making it easier and they can come in? So we need to talk about that. Mm-hmm. Then I think about, do I need to do things that I normally wouldn't do? Like normally I wouldn't, hold a kid down to get something done, but is that what I need to be doing right now? So we could talk about those options as well. And so, I don't know, I think there's all sorts of financing. I want to say, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because we've always kind of been Care Credit. Mm-hmm. And then we did Sunbit for a while that I think is pretty popular. But then when we looked at it not too long ago, like earlier this year, the Sunbit fees were quite like yes, the patient, it's substantial. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so where the patient, it kind of becomes that, yes, now the patient can quote afford it, but then the discount we're having to end up giving on it. And you go back to going, okay, well, maybe I was supposed to make $1,000. But by the time Sunbit took their portion, I actually made $699. Was $699 better than nothing? Than the patient not accepting it all? Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. So then I start going, okay, is that one thing that we kind of dropped with Sunbit? I don't even remember anymore.
We stopped offering it because of the fees.
Right. So then is that something that I need to look at, like adding back on? Yeah. Because some of these $5,000 cases, like, true, if it's a $5,000 case and I only get paid $299, is $299 still better than zero? So
I think we do have to get creative with financing, and that's tough for me to say, especially from a consulting standpoint, because there are usually fees involved, and I don't like that because the dental office is usually, especially if they're involved with insurance, already writing off a lot or taking a discounted fee. But when we get to a time where, you know what, I've got $1,000 in the bank, but I've got to pay for back to school shoes, I got to pay for my groceries, my electricity bill is still insane, so I've got $1,000, but I actually don't have $1,000 to spend. We have to kind of try to step in and intervene. And there's a million options. We could go through, well, maybe not a million, but there's probably 50.
You're talking about us right now, like us taking, you're not talking about from the patient side about accepting treatment. You're talking about like, we've got to pay for shoes. Oh, heck, I'm not even worried about those. I'm worried about paying for my staff. The staff that is costing an arm and a leg. That's who I got to pay for all these supplies that now cost 5 times what they used to.
Well, and the frustrating thing is, it's like, we're going to take a bigger hit by extending financing options, but to your point, having some money is better than none. So I've always resisted financing options because I'm like, it just makes it easy for the patient to choose that option, and then you're taking a 10-15% cut. The dental office is taking a 10-15% cut. So,
on top of the insurance cut.
So let's not do that. But when we get to this point where a patient is truly having to decide whether or not they have the money to spend, we can step in and for this period of time offer financing options. And there are probably 50 different places you could look into. And yes, is there going to be a fee? Yes. For the practice? Yes. And that hurts. But at the same time, it's what the patient needs right now. And they can normally stomach a monthly payment and get the job done now. And
I think also from a feel-good perspective, at least, it's hard for a general dentist to walk around watching their patient, with an abscess tooth or needing endo. Like, it's hard. We're here to help, and then I'm not actually helping you. And for pedo, it's us going, oh my gosh, this kid can't help that their parent didn't budget the right way and then didn't, control their diet, and now the kid has all these cavities. Like, we ache for that child. For the orthodontist, they ache for these kids walking around with malocclusion, and knowing that they're having TMD problems, and knowing that they're getting made fun of at school, and knowing that you fractured your tooth because you have such a excessive overjet. Like, so from all of our different perspectives, we really are trying to help the patient.
Yeah.
So is that another kind of tick in the mark of, damn it, offer that stupid financing, so at least we're making it palatable and accessible for some of our patients?
I honestly feel like we have to right now. And it used to be, oh, we'll offer financing, you know, for anything over $1,500. I would even pause on that. And I feel like, you know, if I know the mindset behind it, oh, at least I'm making $1,500. So if I give up 150 of it, you know, I'm still doing okay. But we're really at a point where the patient may struggle with $500. Like, it's just a different economic situation that we're in.
So then the question I'm going to argue back with again, though, is, but what about my economic situation? Like, this assistant is not taking any less. The assistants that honestly in my practice that are sitting at $20 an hour that really shouldn't be paid more than 14, like pre-pandemic, you really shouldn't be. We had a new hygienist that, what did she want the other day? She asked me for $60 an hour to come temp. And I was like, oh, get the heck out of here. You've lost your mind. But apparently that's norm right now.
Can be.
Yeah, and I was just like, F off, you know. And in a way, I don't blame her. Like, yeah, supply and demand. Ask as much as you can. Yeah. On the other hand, I'm like, who the hell do you think you are? And so I was like, okay, but so for now, for me to offer insurance and offer financing and then have to pay these fees, like, what about my economic situation? Like, what is the best way, I guess, to keep all of that in check and balance?
Yeah, which we have to. So there's a give and a take to everything. And if we start offering financial options and have never done that before, we are going to potentially take a financial hit in the way of that cut coming out of it. So I think it's a good time. Just like treatment acceptance is low, we go back and figure out why. I think it's a good time, if we're going to start extending financial options, to go back and look at overhead. Are there any creative ways that we can cut spending? I was just with one of my orthodontic clients who's also experiencing this same dip that everybody else is. And I went out to his practice. This time every year we do an annual compensation review for every one of his employees. And it was really difficult because we could not extend any raises to anybody. And he felt awful about that. Because there's certainly people who have performed and deserve that. But given the trend that he's seen over this year and the dip that his practice has taken, and then projecting forward and knowing that that's likely going to continue for a bit, it would have been unwise to raise his staff members. So we've got to, I'm not saying don't make that your first go-to. You're like, oh, well, I just got to, not do any raises and maybe cut some pay. Don't start there. Look at every other place first before you start impacting your employees' pay, because again, the same thing, they're struggling to put groceries on the table. So don't make that your first go-to, especially because I think over the years rightly so, we've grown bitter at our employees for taking so much, and I understand that, but we don't want to use this as an opportunity to be like, let me dish it back to them. Look at all your other expenses. If you can cut anything,
well, I think ultimately most of us have realized cutting into our employees is really cutting yourself, because there's not another backup there. So that's why we're tippy-toeing around and playing this game.
On the financial options, though, before listeners dive into any financial options, I am very, very leery of the financial options where you don't get payment in full from the beginning. There are options out there, especially if we get creative and we start looking at which ones are the lowest cost to me. There's plenty of them out there that will finance the patient, and there's some interest attached to it, but you don't get payment in full at the beginning. You get paid when the company itself gets paid.
By the patient?
By the patient. Now, some of them try to counterbalance that by adding an interest. So they'll add 10, 13% interest, 15% interest, depending upon their financial credit score, the patient's credit score. So they'll add interest, and they'll be like, oh, you get to keep the interest. And so you can balance out your risk if you're getting to keep the interest. And if you've got enough money in the bank to be able to have a little bit of risk built in, I'm okay with that. But if you're desperate for money in the bank, don't sign up for a plan where that patient can name their own terms, 18, 24, 36 months, and you've provided all this dentistry, and you've got to wait 36 months to get your full payment.
And assuming they pay.
Assuming they pay. And right now, there's going to be a much higher default rate because, again, push comes to shove. I got to put groceries on this table. I'm not going to make my payment.
Well, how about, I'm not saying something dumb here, like maybe I'm missing something, but what would be the point then? Like, then couldn't I just do my own in-office financing then? Like,
exactly.
And then not take the fee of the company.
Yeah.
Like, the whole point of that company is that I get paid. You're going to take a percentage, but at least I get paid a sizable chunk.
It's essentially farming out your accounts receivable. So they're the one pursuing the patient for payment. They're the one becoming the collection agency. They have their own tools and people to pursue. So in a way, it's semi a collection agency, but they've managed all the terms. They've signed the patient up through their system, and therefore they're the one to pursue the patient. But that's going to cost. Usually that's a monthly fee that the office is having to pay, and normally there's a small cut of that payment that they're taking. Again, I'm not saying that's not an option. You can certainly look into that, but if you're struggling for cash, meaning the practice is, I would not advise that in any way, shape, or form. I prefer the ones that pay the office in full up front, but they normally take a bigger cut. So there's the game that we play with financing.
Okay, let's talk about one of the other arms of this was, okay, do I sign up for every insurance under the sun? Can you go through your thoughts on all of that?
Don't. One word, just don't. So part of the reason that we're in this pickle, this financial, like our employees cost more, our supplies cost more, everything costs more, but we're making less. Our reimbursement rates from insurance have progressively gone down. And so it's created this void of money we used to have that's simply not there. So I would caution everybody very, very strongly to just dive into PPOs. I feel like there are so many other things that you should try first before getting to that particular point. Now, what you could do as an alternative. So let's say we've got a practice that's, fee for service. They don't work with insurance, or they submit to insurance and collect and then balance bill the patient. What you can do is create some security for the patient with like a hassle-free, you're never going to be charged more than $99 for your cleaning. We cap it off there, yes, we sent you your insurance and they paid us $100, but you're never going to be billed more than $99, even though technically we could bill you for $300. So you can kind of create like a ceiling sometimes.
So that's legal when you're not in
Texas. It is. So you'll each listener is going to need to check their laws. Texas is protected. When you're out of network, they can't control the fee that you charge the patient. So that's a good option. I'd much rather do that than dive into in-network, because then the patient's satisfied knowing, okay, I've got this ceiling. I won't go past this. So I can plan for that. I can prepare for that. What they can't plan for is the unknown of how much am I going to be billed this time or that time. So I would go to more of like a ceiling or a hassle-free button before I go to in-network.
You may edit this out of the podcast, but I've always wanted to just say this, and I'm just going to say it. Come on, y'all. Let's all pick a day. Pick 4th of July, Freedom Day next year. And all of us, at least in my zip code, 75063, and anybody nearby, let's all join forces. Let's all send in our Delta Dental contract. I want to drop my contract together on the same day. It's the only way we're going to break free. Please don't edit this out. Come on. Anybody who wants to rally with me, I'm using this platform. It's the only way this works. It's everybody, I can't drop because nobody else will drop. And then everybody will go over to that office instead of my office. And it's if we could all just decide together that.
I will not edit that out at all because that's what I've been wanting for years. I agree. Join together.
Yes.
It's interesting.
Does Delta Dental have hitmen? Do I need to wear a
bulletproof
jacket going forward?
And you just gave away your zip code.
Well, you can find me. I'm not hard to find.
Watch out. Yeah. If Kuba turns up dead, then we know.
Yes. Look at Delta Dental first.
And then exit the network.
Don't let my death be in vain.
All for Kuba.
On my birthday, y'all. Let's all drop. Oh, Lordy. Okay.
No, there is power in numbers. And I was telling you right before we started recording that since the pandemic, I have had every single client of mine drop one or multiple plans because it is not sustainable. The amount that they're paying, the amount that we're charging, there's such a discrepancy. Patients are upset whether you're in network or out of network. They hate you either way. Like, it is lose.
So that's what I was
lose.
going to ask you. Is that any idea on the ones that have dropped plans? How have they fared with that decision?
They've done well. So again, I think it's all in how you handle the drop, but all of them have done well. You in particular, I was telling you this a few months ago that I was comparing you dropped MetLife about 18 months ago or so. And I was comparing your MetLife numbers last year to this year, and you actually have more MetLife patients this year than you did this time last year.
But that's still dependent on the insurance, correct? Like Delta would be a different beast.
Delta is, so I've only had a couple clients brave enough to drop Delta. So drop Delta. And one client, we actually dropped Delta. They were having a capacity issue, actually too many patients. And so they dropped Delta thinking that will kind of get some patients out our door and give us some capacity. And they did not lose but a handful of
But
Delta
are they,
patients.
what is their demographic? Are they sitting out in the boonies where the next dentist is 30 miles away?
No.
Huh.
They've got direct competition in several places around them. So I think the stars aligned for this particular office, really strong reputation in the community, very involved in the community, what I would call a loyal patient base, very engaging doctor. And so they were just loyal. We expected them to go because it is such a drastic change for most Delta patients. And we had intended on them leaving, and they didn't. So I don't know. I think we tend to fear that decision a lot. And I think that the timing has to be right. The patient base needs to be big enough to make that cut. We've got to make sure our team is trained on how to handle that. We got to make sure that we're using the right words. Just all of that. I think we've got to put a lot of thought into it. I don't think we just willy-nilly one day to decide to drop it.
Damn, because that's, me.
But
I've been trying to drop Delta for so long now.
You've put it out there. If we have a date, we can work towards it.
Okay.
It won't be willy-nilly.
If the Delta goons don't come find me.
I know. Delta is, unfortunately, one of the biggest offenders with how low their reimbursements are. I was in one office last week. We were comparing against Medicaid fees, and they were on par with Medicaid or a couple dollars more.
But worse, because there's a cap.
Yeah.
At least Medicaid, we can do what we need to do, and the patient is still happy. Delta, the patient still hates us because it's our fault. I
know. And again, there's plenty of offices out there that are in network, and they're figuring out how to make it work, but it's difficult. And I do think part of this, treatment acceptance is going down. Does that really seem like a smart time to, pull out of a couple insurance plans? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because when we do that, if we retain our patients and if we handle the whole situation well, those same patients are seen on our schedule at double the price. It closes this gap that we're experiencing from less treatment. So in my mind, it's absolutely the right time.
So then maybe we need to have an episode where you talk us through, like, what does that mean if the timing's right and if the staff is trained? Like, what does that mean? How am I doing this then?
Yeah.
Because again, it seems like a very counterintuitive thing that I'm struggling to book patients, and now I drop insurance, which is a lot of the reason why patients come see me, because I'm in their insurance listing. So I think that to me is really counterintuitive. And I see what you're saying, but I guess to me, I see it in concept, but I want to know how that would work, like in actuality.
Yeah, we'll do the next one on this. Okay, so wrapping up treatment acceptance. So if we come back to okay, collectively, people are experiencing less treatment acceptance. We said, first and foremost, you need to go back and look at why. Don't just assume that things are going well. Look at who's presenting finances. How are they presenting the treatment? Are they following
what
up?
are you doing? I mean, for me, just now talking through this, I can't remember if we really did drop Sunbit or not.
We did.
You said we did totally, or do we have a certain price point we're giving? Or
We are still with them, so we could offer it.
But we're
we've
not offering
stopped.
it to anybody.
We are not currently offering
so then
it.
that for me goes, okay, well maybe we need to.
Yeah.
So I interrupted you. So we're going back and we're looking into who's presenting.
Yep, who's presenting, how they're presenting. Do we have a good follow-up plan? Are we making it easy for them to schedule in the way of finances, in the way of even time offerings, and can we get them scheduled quickly as they leave the office? Can they schedule via text message, which is very popular nowadays? Are we making it easy for them to get on the schedule? And then, of course, looking into your financial options, either evaluating the ones that you have. I'll leave one little extra tidbit here. Care Credit, and I don't know if you remember this, but my favorite part of Care Credit is their long-term payment plans, which are 24, 36, 48, and 60-month options. The difference is that it is a 5% fee to the dental office, which is still sounds awful, but it's very low compared to a lot of other options. The patient pays interest on those long payout plans. So the downside is for the patient, but I keep telling people in an economic downturn where cash is key and I need the money in the bank, most patients will opt for a longer payout plan and a lower monthly payment, which should be music to our ears with Care Credit because our fee is only 5%.
See, I would have thought the opposite.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Because Care Credit's keeping the interest. We're not keeping the interest on that. So they're getting the upside of that longer payment plan. So we only pay 5%.
Has it always been like that? Because I thought it was opposite.
It's always been like that. I don't know why.
Because I always
people
thought we
don't offer
wanted
it.
them to have a shorter time to pay it back. Because I thought our fees were less the shorter the time.
So the only other 5% option with Care Credit is the 6-month interest-free plan. Once you go to 12 months, it's 10%. Once you go to 18 months interest-free, it's 15% to the practice. We have, and this has just been something the dental field has done wrong, interest-free has been king, right? We've always focused on interest-free, interest-free, interest-free because we felt like that would get the patients. And it's been very attractive, no doubt. So we just never even talked about the interest-bearing options because we assumed the patient wouldn't want that. I feel like that is such a disservice, especially now in an economic downturn. People want that money in their bank and they want the long payout option. Please do not forget to offer the patient that option. It is less money for you. It, in the long run, ultimately is more money for the patient, but the patient is opting for that. Let them choose how to spend their money. Don't decide that for them. So if you're with Care Credit, look at that and start offering that.
I'd be very interested to see, like, Care Credit, what their rationale is behind, like, the 18-month. Like, is that the most popular one that patients pick, and why? Like,
It's the most risk to them, which is why the biggest fee comes to the office.
right, but I'm just wondering, like, what is that what patients tend to pick
Oh,
versus
yeah.
12 months
Yeah.
versus 2 years or 5 years? Like, they pick 18 months? Like, they must have a reason. It's
Yeah.
just, that seems odd to me.
Yeah. So look into financial options. If you've got Care Credit, reevaluate. Look at other options that you might can consider and make sure your team is well versed on how to offer financial options. Make sure that they're offering it. That's what frustrates me too, is sometimes we talk about it and then the team member is just resistant to financial options. And I get it. It's for good reason. They want the money in the bank directly.
I bet you anything it's not that. I doubt, at least I'm thinking about my team members, I don't think it's that at all. I would wish it was that they
Yeah.
had that much care for the practice. I think they forget about it because they're bombarded with other things. And then it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about.
Yeah.
And they don't want to learn the verbiage and go through all that and have to deal with this patient asking questions, and they may not understand it completely themselves. And so then it's just easier to forget about it.
Yeah.
And then say, oh, well, I was thinking, like, why should I offer that? And when I could try to get the patient to pay. And then you have the opposite, where then you've got others that don't that only give the option. Here, if you need financial options, here you go. Yeah. And so it's that savvy of kind of reading the patient, doing all of that the majority of people don't have.
Exactly.
And so, because I think we've run the gamut on both in our office.
Which again, it goes back to take the time to train your team, you know.
But then I go back to, again, I know I said this in the previous episode, we have trained. And it's just, there's certain limitations. So I guess.
And there are ways that you can kind of circumvent that. So I've got one client in particular that every patient is presented with a financial payment form, and it has their 4 options. Every patient, and that has to be signed and put into their patient document center. And then the team, he's got a great bonus program, and part of their bonus is for complete charts. If he has somebody that kind of randomly will look through and check patients to see if everything's there. If the person finds somebody that doesn't have that financial document form in their doc center, then the team is not bonused for that month. So
but that is so irritating that we have to bonus you to do your job.
I know. But you can't, all I'm saying is you can't have something like put in place. If you don't trust your team to get it done, then kind of put something in place where
that's a smart idea,
can get it done. So, all right. Thanks
for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.